The snow fell heavily that Christmas night, blanketing the small town in silence. Inside a modest, dimly lit house, an elderly man sat alone by the fireplace. His wrinkled hands trembled as he held a faded photograph of his son. The clock on the wall ticked loudly, each second echoing the emptiness he felt. Just hours ago, his son, a wealthy millionaire, had visited him. But the visit wasn't what the old man had hoped for. Instead of warmth and laughter, there was coldness and tension. The son had barely spoken, his eyes darting around the room as if the very sight of his father's humble home disgusted him. "I can't stay," the son had said abruptly, standing up from the creaky wooden chair. "I have important meetings tomorrow." "You'll be fine here, won't you?" The old man had nodded, forcing a smile. He didn't want to be a burden. But as his son walked out the door without a second glance, the old man felt a sharp pang of loneliness. He had raised his son alone after his wife passed away, working tirelessly to give him a better life. And now, on Christmas night, he was left alone in the cold. The wind howled outside, rattling the windows. The old man wrapped his thin blanket tighter around himself and stared into the flickering flames of the fire. He thought about calling his son, but he knew it would be pointless. His son was too busy for him now. Just as he was about to drift off to sleep, a strange noise caught his attention. It was a faint hum, almost like a whisper, coming from outside. Curious, the old man stood up and shuffled to the window. The snow was falling harder now, but he could see something glowing faintly in the distance. He grabbed his coat and stepped outside, the cold biting at his skin. The glow grew brighter as he approached, and soon he found himself standing in front of a strange, metallic object half buried in the snow. It was unlike anything he had ever seen, smooth and shimmering, with intricate patterns etched into its surface. As he reached out to touch it, the object suddenly emitted a blinding light. The old man stumbled back, shielding his eyes. When the light faded, he felt a strange warmth spreading through his body. The object began to float, hovering just above the ground. Before he could react, the object shot a beam of light into the sky, and the old man felt himself being lifted off the ground. Panic set in as he realized he was no longer in control of his movements. The world around him blurred, and for a moment, he thought he was dreaming. When his feet touched the ground again, he found himself in a place that defied all logic. The sky was a deep shade of purple, and the air was filled with a soft, melodic hum. Strange structures loomed in the distance, their shapes twisting and shifting as if alive. The old man's heart raced as he tried to make sense of what was happening. Before he could gather his thoughts, a figure appeared before him. It was tall and slender, with glowing eyes and skin that seemed to shimmer like starlight. "Do not be afraid," the being said, its voice calm and soothing. "You have been chosen for a reason." The old man's mind raced with questions, but before he could ask any, the being continued. "Your son made a deal with us long ago. In exchange for wealth and power, he agreed to give us something precious. But now, the time has come to fulfill that agreement." The old man's heart sank as he realized what the being was implying. His son had traded him away. The being extended a hand, and the old man felt a surge of energy coursing through him. "You have a choice," the being said. "You can accept your fate, or you can fight to change it. But know this, the path ahead will not be easy." The old man clenched his fists, his fear giving way to determination. He had spent his life sacrificing for his son, and now he would do it again. "I'll fight," he said firmly. The being nodded, and the world around him began to shift once more. The old man blinked, and the strange, shimmering world around him dissolved into darkness. For a moment, he felt weightless, as if floating in an endless void. Then, with a sudden jolt, he found himself standing in a place that was both familiar and alien. He was back in his home, but something was different. The air felt heavier, and the walls seemed to pulse faintly, as if alive. The glowing object he had found in the snow was now resting on his kitchen table, its light dim but steady. The old man approached it cautiously, his heart pounding. He reached out to touch it, but as soon as his fingers brushed its surface, a flood of memories rushed through his mind. He saw his son as a young boy, laughing and playing in the yard. He remembered the sacrifices he had made, working double shifts, skipping meals, and selling his prized possessions to ensure his son had a good education. He had given everything, and yet, his son had grown distant over the years. The memories shifted, and he saw his son as a young man, standing in a dark room, speaking to a shadowy figure. The figure's voice was cold and calculating. "We can give you everything you desire," it said. "Wealth, power, success. But in return, you must give us something of equal value." The old man's son hesitated, his eyes darting nervously. "What do you want?" The figure leaned closer, its glowing eyes piercing through the darkness. "Your father." The memory faded, and the old man stumbled back, his chest tight with pain. He had always known his son was ambitious, but he never imagined he would go this far. As he tried to process what he had seen, the glowing object on the table began to hum louder. Its light grew brighter, and suddenly, a holographic image appeared in the air above it. It was the same being he had encountered in the strange world, tall, slender, and shimmering like starlight. "You have seen the truth," the being said, its voice calm but firm. "Your son made a deal with us, but he did not understand the consequences. Now, the time has come to fulfill that agreement." The old man's hands trembled as he spoke. "What do you want from me?" The being tilted its head, studying him. "Your son's greed has disrupted the balance. He took more than he was meant to have, and now, he must face the consequences. But you have a choice. You can take his place, or you can help him undo what he has done." The old man's mind raced. He had spent his life protecting his son, and even now, he couldn't bear the thought of him suffering. "What do I need to do?" he asked, his voice steady despite the fear in his heart. The being extended a hand, and a small, glowing orb appeared in its palm. "This will guide you. It will show you the path, but the journey will not be easy. You must confront your son and make him understand the cost of his actions." The old man took the orb, its warmth spreading through his hand. He felt a surge of determination, but also a deep sadness. He had always hoped his son would find happiness, but not at such a terrible price. As he held the orb, the room around him began to shift again. The walls faded away, and he found himself standing in a bustling city. The streets were filled with people, but no one seemed to notice him. In the distance, he saw a tall, gleaming skyscraper, the headquarters of his son's company. He knew he had to go there, but the thought of facing his son filled him with dread. The orb in his hand pulsed softly, guiding him forward. As he walked through the crowded streets, he couldn't help but notice the stark contrast between his son's world and his own. The wealth, the luxury, the power, it all seemed so empty compared to the love and connection he had always valued. When he reached the skyscraper, the guards at the entrance didn't stop him. It was as if they couldn't see him. He stepped into the elevator, and the doors closed behind him. As the elevator ascended, the old man took a deep breath, preparing himself for what was to come. He didn't know how his son would react, but he knew he had to try. The doors opened, and he stepped into a lavish office. His son was sitting at a large desk, staring at a computer screen. He looked older, more tired than the old man remembered. The old man hesitated for a moment, then stepped forward. "Son," he said softly. His son looked up, his eyes widening in shock. For a moment, he just stared, as if he couldn't believe what he was seeing. "Dad," he whispered. The old man nodded, his heart aching at the sight of his son's confusion. "I need to talk to you," he said. "It's about the deal you made." His son's face paled, and he stood up abruptly. "How do you know about that?" The old man held up the glowing orb. They sent me. You need to understand what you've done. His son's eyes filled with fear, and for the first time in years, the old man saw a glimpse of the boy he had raised. The office was silent except for the faint hum of the glowing orb in the old man's hand. His son stared at it, his face a mixture of fear and disbelief. The luxurious surroundings, the polished mahogany desk, the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, the expensive art on the walls, seemed to fade into the background as the weight of the moment settled between them. "Dad," the son said, his voice trembling, "how are you here?" I thought you were alone," the old man interrupted, his voice steady but filled with sadness. "Yes, you left me alone. But that's not why I'm here." He stepped closer, holding up the orb. Its light reflected in his son's wide eyes. "This," the old man said, "is a reminder of the deal you made. Do you remember?" The son's face turned pale, and he sank back into his chair. His hands gripped the armrests tightly, as if he were trying to ground himself. "I didn't think it was real," he whispered. "I thought it was just a dream, or some kind of trick." The old man's heart ached at the fear in his son's voice, but he knew he couldn't soften the truth. "It was real," he said firmly. "You made a deal with beings you didn't understand. You traded something precious for wealth and power. Do you even remember what you gave them?" The son looked away, his jaw tightening. "I didn't think it mattered. I just wanted to be successful. To have everything I never had growing up." The old man sighed, his shoulders slumping. "You had everything you needed. Love. Family. A home. But you threw it all away for this." He gestured to the opulent office. "And now, they've come to collect what you promised." The son's eyes snapped back to his father. "What do you mean? What are they going to do?" The old man hesitated, the weight of his next words heavy on his chest. "They want me," he said quietly. "In exchange for your success, you gave them your father." The son's face crumpled, and for the first time in years, the old man saw genuine remorse in his eyes. "No," the son said, shaking his head. "No, I didn't mean. I didn't know it would be like this. I didn't know it would hurt you." The old man stepped closer, placing the orb on the desk. Its light pulsed softly, casting strange shadows on the walls. "It's not too late to fix this," he said. "But you have to be willing to make things right. You have to let go of what you took." The son stared at the orb, his hands trembling. "What do I have to do?" Before the old man could answer, the room began to change. The walls seemed to dissolve, and the office was replaced by the same strange, shimmering world the old man had visited earlier. The being from before stood before them, its glowing eyes fixed on the sun. "You have broken the balance," the being said, its voice echoing with an otherworldly resonance. "You took more than you were meant to have, and now, you must face the consequences." The son stumbled back, his face filled with terror. "I didn't know. I didn't understand what I was doing." The being tilted its head, its expression unreadable. "Ignorance does not absolve you. You made a choice, and now, you must make another." The old man stepped forward, his voice firm. "Let me take his place. I'll do whatever it takes to fix this." The being turned to him, its gaze piercing. "You would sacrifice yourself for him, even after all he has done?" The old man nodded without hesitation. "He's my son. I've spent my life protecting him, and I won't stop now." The son's eyes filled with tears. "Dad, no. I can't let you do this." The old man turned to him, his expression softening. "It's not your choice to make. This is my decision." The being studied them for a moment, then nodded. "Very well. But know this, the path ahead will not be easy. To undo what has been done, you must confront the truth of your actions and face the consequences. The son swallowed hard, his voice barely a whisper. What do I have to do? The being extended a hand, and a swirling portal appeared beside them. Step through, and you will see. But be warned, once you begin this journey, there is no turning back. The old man placed a hand on his son's shoulder. We'll do this together. The son hesitated, then nodded. Together, they stepped through the portal, leaving the shimmering world behind. The moment they stepped through the portal, the world around them blurred into a whirlwind of light and sound. The old man and his son felt as though they were being pulled in every direction at once, their senses overwhelmed by the chaos. When the whirlwind finally subsided, they found themselves standing in a familiar place, the old man's modest home. But something was different. The air was warmer, the light softer, and the faint sound of laughter echoed from the backyard. The old man's heart skipped a beat as he recognized the scene. It was a memory from years ago, a sunny afternoon when his son was just a boy. He could see himself, younger and stronger, playing with his son in the yard. The boy's laughter was infectious, his eyes bright with joy. The son stared at the scene, his face pale. What is this? The old man's voice was soft, filled with nostalgia. This is the past. A time when things were simpler. The being's voice echoed around them, though it was nowhere to be seen. To undo what has been done, you must confront the choices that led you here. This is where it began. The son's hands clenched into fists. I don't understand. What does this have to do with anything? The old man turned to him, his eyes filled with sadness. This is where you started to change. Where you started to want more than what we had. The scene shifted, and they were inside the house. The younger version of the old man was sitting at the kitchen table, counting out a small stack of bills. His face was lined with worry, but he forced a smile as his son walked in. Here, the younger man said, handing the boy a few bills. This is for your school trip. I know it's not much, but it's all I can spare right now. The boy took the money, but his expression was sullen. It's not enough. Everyone else is going to have way more than me. Why can't we be like them? The younger man sighed, his shoulders slumping. I'm doing the best I can, son. Money isn't everything. The boy didn't respond. He just turned and walked away, his disappointment palpable. The son watching the scene flinched, as if the memory had struck him physically. I didn't mean it like that, he whispered. I didn't know how hard it was for you. The old man placed a hand on his shoulder. You were just a boy. You didn't understand. But that's when it started, the resentment, the desire for more. And it only grew from there. The scene shifted again, this time to a small, dimly lit room. The son, now a young man, was sitting at a desk, staring at a pile of bills. His face was twisted with frustration. I can't keep living like this, he muttered to himself. I need more. I deserve more. As if in response to his words, a shadowy figure appeared in the corner of the room. Its voice was low and hypnotic. You can have everything you desire, it said. Wealth, power, success. All you have to do is make a deal. The young man hesitated, his eyes darting nervously. What kind of deal? The figure stepped closer, its glowing eyes piercing through the darkness. In exchange for your success, you must give us something of equal value. The young man's hands trembled as he asked, What do you want? The figure leaned closer, its voice a whisper. Your father. The son watching the scene gasped, his face filled with horror. No. I didn't. I didn't mean it like that. The old man's voice was gentle but firm. You made the deal, son. You chose wealth over family. The son turned to him, tears streaming down his face. I didn't know it would hurt you. I didn't know it would come to this. The old man's eyes were filled with compassion. I know you didn't. But now you have to face the consequences of your choices. The being's voice echoed around them once more. The past cannot be changed, but the future is still yours to shape. To undo what has been done, you must let go of what you took. The son's voice was barely a whisper. How? The old man took his hand, his grip firm and reassuring. We'll do it together. The scene shifted one final time, and they found themselves back in the present, standing in the old man's home. The glowing orb rested on the table, its light steady and warm. The son stared at it, his face filled with determination. What do I have to do? The old man smiled softly. You have to let go of the wealth and power you gained from the deal. You have to choose family over greed. The son nodded, his resolve hardening. I'll do it. I'll give it all up. As he spoke, the orb's light grew brighter, filling the room with a warm, golden glow. The being appeared once more, its expression unreadable. The choice has been made, it said. But know this, the path ahead will not be easy. You must prove your sincerity through your actions. The son took a deep breath, then turned to his father. I'm ready. The old man placed a hand on his shoulder, his eyes filled with pride. Then let's begin. The golden glow from the orb filled the room, casting long shadows on the walls. The being stood silently, its shimmering form radiating an otherworldly calm. The old man and his son stood side by side, their resolve firm but their hearts heavy with the weight of what was to come. To undo the deal, the being said, its voice echoing with a strange resonance, you must return what was taken. The wealth, the power, the success, all of it must be relinquished. But more than that, you must prove that your change of heart is genuine. The son nodded, his face pale but determined. I'll do whatever it takes. The old man squeezed his son's shoulder, offering silent support. He knew this would not be easy, but he also knew it was necessary. The being extended a hand, and the orb floated into the air, its light intensifying. The room around them began to dissolve, replaced by a vast, empty space filled with swirling clouds of light. In the distance, they could see a towering structure, a gateway of some kind, pulsating with energy. That is the threshold, the being said. To pass through it, you must leave behind everything you gained from the deal. But be warned, once you do, there is no turning back. The son took a deep breath, then stepped forward. As he did, the air around him seemed to shimmer, and images began to appear, memories of his wealth and success. His luxurious penthouse, his expensive cars, his thriving business. Each image was accompanied by a faint whisper, as if the objects themselves were pleading with him to keep them. He hesitated, his hands trembling. It's harder than I thought. The old man stepped up beside him, his voice steady. Remember why you're doing this. Remember what truly matters. The son closed his eyes, taking a deep breath. When he opened them again, his resolve had hardened. He reached out, and one by one, the images began to fade. The penthouse dissolved into mist, the cars vanished, and the business crumbled into nothingness. As each memory disappeared, the son felt a strange sense of relief, as if a heavy weight had been lifted from his shoulders. But there was also a pang of loss, a reminder of what he was giving up. When the last image faded, the being spoke again. You have done well, but there is one more thing you must do. The son turned to it, his brow furrowed. What else is there? The being's gaze shifted to the old man. Your father offered to take your place. To sacrifice himself for you. Now, you must prove that you are willing to do the same for him. The son's eyes widened in shock. What do you mean? The being's voice was calm but firm. To fully undo the deal, you must offer something of equal value. Your father's life was the price you agreed to. Now, you must offer your own. The old man stepped forward, his voice filled with urgency. No. That's not what we agreed to. I'll take his place. I'll do it. The being shook its head. The choice is his to make. The son stared at the being, his mind racing. He looked at his father, his heart aching at the thought of losing him. But he also knew that this was his chance to make things right, to prove that he had truly changed. I'll do it, he said, his voice steady. If it means saving my father, I'll do it. The old man's eyes filled with tears. No, son. You don't have to do this. The son turned to him, his expression filled with love and regret. Yes, I do. I've spent my life chasing things that didn't matter. But you've always been there for me. Now it's my turn to be there for you. The being nodded, its expression unreadable. Then stepped forward. The son took a deep breath, then walked toward the gateway. As he approached, the energy around it grew more intense, the air crackling with power. He could feel it pulling at him, as if trying to draw him in. He glanced back at his father one last time, his heart filled with a strange mix of fear and peace. I love you, Dad. The old man reached out, his voice breaking. I love you too, son. The son stepped through the gateway, and for a moment, everything went still. Then, with a blinding flash of light, the gateway vanished, leaving the old man and the being alone in the vast, empty space. The old man fell to his knees, his heart shattered. No. Please, no. The being stepped closer, its voice gentle. Your son's sacrifice has undone the deal. The balance has been restored. The old man looked up, his eyes filled with tears. But at what cost? I've lost him forever. The being tilted its head, its expression softening. Not forever. True sacrifice is never in vain. Look. It gestured toward the space where the gateway had been, and the old man saw a faint glimmer of light. As he watched, the light grew brighter, forming into a familiar shape. His son stood before him, whole and unharmed, a look of wonder on his face. Dad, he whispered. The old man stumbled to his feet, pulling his son into a tight embrace. Tears streamed down his face as he held him, his heart overflowing with gratitude and love. The being watched them, its form beginning to fade. Remember this moment, it said. True wealth lies not in material possessions, but in the love and connections we share. And with that, it was gone, leaving the old man and his son alone in the vast, empty space. The vast, empty space around them began to dissolve, the swirling clouds of light fading into a soft, warm glow. The old man and his son found themselves standing back in the modest home, the familiar surroundings a stark contrast to the otherworldly realm they had just left. The son looked around, his eyes wide with wonder. Is this real? The old man smiled, his heart still racing from the emotional whirlwind they had just experienced. Yes, son. It's real. The son took a deep breath, as if savoring the air of his childhood home. He looked at his father, his eyes filled with a mix of gratitude and regret. I can't believe I almost lost all of this. I can't believe I almost lost you. The old man placed a hand on his son's shoulder, his touch warm and reassuring. You didn't lose me. And you didn't lose yourself. That's what matters. The son nodded, but his expression grew serious. I have so much to make up for. So many things I need to change. The old man's smile softened. You've already taken the first step. The rest will come in time. As they stood there, the son's mind began to race with thoughts of the life he had left behind, the wealth, the power, the success. But now, those things felt hollow, meaningless compared to the love and connection he had rediscovered. I need to go back, he said suddenly. I need to fix what I've done. The old man raised an eyebrow. What do you mean? The son's eyes were filled with determination. I need to undo the damage I've caused. I need to make things right, not just for us, but for everyone I hurt along the way. The old man's heart swelled with pride. That's a brave decision, son. But it won't be easy. The son nodded. I know. I think it's trying to tell you something. The son reached out, and the orb floated into his hand. As soon as he touched it, a flood of images filled his mind, scenes of the people he had wronged, the lives he had disrupted, the opportunities he had squandered. He saw the employees he had laid off to cut costs, the friends he had pushed away in his pursuit of success, the strangers he had overlooked in his quest for power. Each image was accompanied by a pang of guilt, but also a glimmer of hope, a chance to make things right. When the images faded, the son took a deep breath, his resolve stronger than ever. I know what I need to do. The old man smiled. Then let's get started. The son clutched the glowing orb tightly, its warmth spreading through his hand like a comforting embrace. The images he had seen, the people he had hurt, the lives he had disrupted, were still fresh in his mind. He knew what he had to do, but the path ahead was daunting. Where do we start? He asked, turning to his father. The old man smiled gently. We start by taking responsibility. One step at a time. The orb pulsed softly, as if in agreement, and a faint light began to guide them toward the door. The son took a deep breath and followed, his father by his side. Their first stop was the small town where the son had grown up. As they walked through the familiar streets, the son couldn't help but notice how much had changed, and how much had stayed the same. The houses were older, the faces unfamiliar, but the sense of community was still there. They arrived at a modest home, its paint peeling and its garden overgrown. The son hesitated, his heart pounding. This is where Mr. Thompson used to live, he said quietly. He was my teacher. He believed in me when no one else did. The old man nodded. He retired years ago. Times have been hard for him. The son swallowed hard, then knocked on the door. After a moment, an elderly man opened it, his face lighting up with recognition. Well, I'll be, Mr. Thompson said, his voice warm but tinged with surprise. Look who it is. The big-shot millionaire. The son flinched at the title, but he forced a smile. It's good to see you, Mr. Thompson. I wanted to apologize. Mr. Thompson raised an eyebrow. Apologize? For what? The son's voice trembled as he spoke. For forgetting where I came from. For not appreciating everything you did for me. I was so focused on success that I lost sight of what really matters. Mr. Thompson studied him for a moment, then smiled. Well, it's never too late to make things right. Come on in. Over the next few hours, the son listened as Mr. Thompson shared stories of his struggles in retirement, the rising costs, the health issues, the loneliness. The son's heart ached as he realized how much he could have helped if he hadn't been so consumed by his own ambitions. Before they left, the son handed Mr. Thompson an envelope. This is for you. It's not much, but it's a start. Mr. Thompson opened the envelope, his eyes widening at the sight of the check inside. This is too much. The son shook his head. It's not enough. But I'll be back. I promise. As they walked away, the son felt a strange sense of peace. It was a small step, but it was a step in the right direction. Their next stop was the city, where the son's business had once thrived. The towering skyscraper that had been the symbol of his success now felt like a monument to his mistakes. They entered the building, and the son was immediately struck by the changes. The once bustling office was now quiet, the desks empty, the walls bare. A young woman approached them, her face filled with surprise. Mr. Carter? Is that you? The son nodded, his heart heavy. Yes. I came to apologize. To all of you. The woman's eyes filled with tears. You left us with nothing. No severance, no warning. Just, gone. The son's voice broke as he replied. I know. And I'm so sorry. I was selfish, and I hurt a lot of people. But I'm here to make things right. Over the next few days, the son worked tirelessly to undo the damage he had caused. He rehired the employees he had laid off, paid back the debts he had ignored, and even started a foundation to help others who had been affected by his actions. It wasn't easy. There were moments of doubt, moments when the weight of his past mistakes threatened to overwhelm him. But through it all, his father was there, offering support and guidance. As they stood on the rooftop of the skyscraper one evening, watching the sun set over the city, the son turned to his father. I don't know if I'll ever be able to make up for everything I've done. The old man placed a hand on his shoulder. You don't have to make up for it all at once. What matters is that you're trying. That's what redemption is all about. The son nodded, his heart filled with gratitude. For the first time in years, he felt like he was on the right path. The sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple. The city lights began to flicker on, one by one, as the son and his father stood on the rooftop, the cool evening breeze brushing against their faces. The son felt a sense of calm he hadn't known in years, but there was still one thing left to do, one final step in his journey of redemption. Dad, the son said, breaking the comfortable silence, I've been thinking. I've done a lot to make things right, but there's still something missing. The old man turned to him, his eyes filled with curiosity. What is it, son? The son took a deep breath. I need to share my story. Not to boast or to seek pity, but to help others who might be walking the same path I did. I want them to know that it's never too late to change, to make things right. The old man smiled, his pride evident. That's a wonderful idea. Sometimes, the greatest lessons come from the hardest experiences. The son nodded, his resolve firm. I'll start by writing it all down, every mistake, every regret, every step I took to fix what I broke. And then I'll share it with the world. Over the next few weeks, the son poured his heart into his story. He wrote about his childhood, his rise to wealth, his fall into greed, and his journey back to humility and love. He didn't sugarcoat the details or shy away from the painful truths. He wrote with honesty and vulnerability, hoping that his words might reach someone who needed to hear them. When the story was finished, he published it, not as a boastful memoir, but as a humble letter to the world. The response was overwhelming. People from all walks of life reached out to him, sharing their own stories of struggle and redemption. Some thanked him for his honesty, others found hope in his words. One evening, as the son sat in his father's modest living room, reading through the messages he had received, he felt a deep sense of fulfillment. He had spent so much of his life chasing success, but now he realized that true success wasn't measured in wealth or power, it was measured in the lives you touched and the love you shared. The old man walked in, carrying 2 cups of tea. He handed one to his son and sat down beside him. You've come a long way, he said, his voice filled with warmth. The son smiled, setting aside his laptop. I couldn't have done it without you, Dad. You never gave up on me, even when I gave up on myself. The old man chuckled softly. That's what fathers do. We believe in our children, even when they don't believe in themselves. The son's eyes filled with tears. I don't know how to thank you. The old man placed a hand on his son's shoulder. You already have. Seeing you grow into the man you were meant to be, that's all the thanks I need. They sat in silence for a while, sipping their tea and enjoying the quiet moment. The son felt a profound sense of peace, as if a weight he hadn't even realized he was carrying had finally been lifted. As the night deepened, the old man spoke again. You know, son, life isn't about avoiding mistakes. It's about learning from them. You've done that, and now you're helping others do the same. That's what truly matters." The son nodded, his heart swelling with gratitude. "I just hope I can keep making a difference." The old man smiled. "You will. As long as you remember what's important, family, love, and the connections we share, you'll always be on the right path." The son leaned back in his chair, feeling a sense of contentment he hadn't known in years. He had lost so much in his pursuit of success, but he had gained something far more valuable: a second chance, a renewed sense of purpose, and the love of his father. As he looked out the window at the stars twinkling in the night sky, he realized that his journey wasn't just about redemption. It was about understanding the true meaning of wealth, not in material possessions, but in the relationships we nurture and the lives we touch. And with that, the son knew he had finally found what he had been searching for all along.